Hello and welcome to Not Your Mother's Midlife Crisis. This is Chris. It's me, and this is my co-host Chris.
Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing great except for the ragweed.
Oh,
The
yes.
ragweed October, we get a lot of ragweed here, and I don't like ever saying negative things about myself. I totally believe in self-talk, but it's like ugly face month but it goes with Halloween. Like I wake up every morning, one eye is swollen, one side of my face just looks you're losing that summer glow. I'm fine, but I do have visions of going out and dressing up like a ninja suit and killing all the ragweed on the island. We have a lot of ragweed on this island, and I learned that salt water kills it. So I can just, like, take some ocean
Oh,
water,
okay.
spray it, and then get rid of this ragweed.
Okay, well, I
That's where
can
I
tell
am.
you I wake up with swollen eyes and the wrinkle on my face, and I have no allergies. So I think mine is just
Just
age.
all right, well,
Yeah.
you know we'll get through this.
Yeah.
Somehow we'll get through this.
Mhm.
November's coming.
Yes.
So, a few announcements before we get into the really exciting part of our show and our big to do today. Downloads. I told you we're averaging 500 downloads a month, which is amazing. We're super super
Mhm.
happy about that. And what I want to encourage our streamers to do is to download.
Yes.
We have
Mhm.
about 250 people streaming, so that's about
That's
750,
exciting.
which is, we finally have enough data that showed me that. And what I'm hoping is to convert our streamers into downloads because once we hit that 1,000, Spotify will then put ads and that will help monetize, which will just, pay for the cost of this,
Yeah, it's
right?
exciting.
So
Mhm.
if you can download, we really would appreciate it. And then delete it. After you listen to it, delete it so it doesn't take up space on your device. The other thing is that link to that outfit.
Outfit, yeah.
Yes, underoutfit.com. Told you about how great those bras are. I even threw one in the dryer by accident, and it still looked like it came out of the package.
Uh,
The sewn-in pads did not move at all. Super excited. But that code we gave you is not usable. You have to use the whole link.
yes.
So sorry for that menopause moment. You need to go to our bio or go to the episode, click the full episode, all the episode details, and from there, click the link at the bottom, and you can go and get yourself an under outfit bra too.
And it works. Because I just
Oh, that's right.
I ordered sports bras for my sisters and my niece. So, I'm really excited. I'm excited for everyone to try Under Outfit.
Yeah, and you reminded me that you have to create the account first, and then you didn't get that option to click influencer and put not your mother's midlife crisis until the very end of checkout.
Correct.
So you
Mhm.
have to go all the way through to the very end of the checkout in order to be able to click the right boxes.
Yeah,
Influencer and then type in not your mother's midlife crisis.
but
All
it's
right.
exciting.
Are you ready for the big news?
Oh, I'm
Got
ready.
a drum roll?
I know,
A
and
good
we've
one.
we've been hyping her on all these episodes, and we are so excited for our guest today. We have Cindy Dupuie, who is actually we've been taking her Grace and Transition course. That's been amazing. But Cindy is a certified functional medicine specialist and a Meno guide with 20 years experience. And her superpower is connecting all the dots for women during their health journey. So, Cindy, welcome to Not Your Mother's Midlife Crisis.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here with both of you and so nice to be on your show and to be able to talk to all of your women who watch you. It's fabulous. All the downloads you're getting. I'm excited.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, so we're super excited to have you. I didn't realize how much I was going to learn in your class. I each time we've talked about it, I'm like, I've learned something new each time that we've
Mhm.
been in there. And we've been, talking to a lot of different people and we've had our own journey. And so we kind of, thought we had all the info, but yeah, you still teaching me something new each time. Would you be able to take a minute and just tell our listeners what services you can provide for them and what you provide for your clients?
Yes. Specifically for women, I do help women basically of all ages, but I've moved into the perimenopause and menopausal space for many reasons, partially because I was watching my own clients start to lose ground and I knew how they were eating. I knew what their lifestyle was. I'm going, I'm missing a piece here. So that was part of it. The other part of it was I was watching my contemporaries also lose ground. And so I thought, it really is important to start jumping into the hormone piece of it. And I had been on hormones for many, many years. And so I really did a deep dive starting about, I don't know, about 5 years ago. And here I am helping women move through their perimenopausal and menopausal years, postmenopausal years with grace. So helping them with that transition, helping them understand exactly what's going on with their bodies, educating them so they can make the choices that they want to make. So I do that through the course. I do that one-on-one. So I offer virtual consultations. So I can help anyone nationally, internationally. And, so those are my women. And then I also do help men as well. I like them. And since I am a functional medicine practitioner, I can go a little bit deeper than maybe even your integrative. There's such a range on both functional medicine practitioners and with integrative and all of that. I think you mentioned connecting the dots. That's one of my favorite things to do, that along with educating. I mean, if I have an audience of one, I'm really happy.
And I can tell you, Cindy, just got back from Scotland, as we've talked about, on the show, and met this lovely person, Jane, in Loch Ness, Scotland, who owned the B&B. We started talking about menopause and the journey. And I said, it doesn't matter where you are, because when you mentioned internationally in the world, she's had the same experience and the same frustrations that that we've all shared, and that what we've talked about, and that she can't get the answers and just not feeling herself. So, we were saying like, look, you're not alone. And I told her about the podcast. I told her that you were going to be on the podcast as one of our special guests that I feel like that she would really benefit from. So I've already getting your name out there across the pond in Scotland.
Internationally. Woo!
Yeah, so it was really good. So a little shout out to Jean as well. But can you please tell women, how do you distinguish between what could be perimenopause or a thyroid issue or an adrenal issue? Because I know that that's something that's common.
That is common, and it's a really good question to ask. When we start moving into perimenopause, that's kind of the time when, yes, our hormones are beginning to fluctuate, and every woman's a little bit different. The first thing we usually start to lose is our progesterone, but it's also a time where life kind of catches up with us, right? We go, 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 and maybe aren't as careful about what we eat. We maybe have stressed, we go along, and stressors are just part of life. And so we hit around, the 40s or so, that can start kind of pushing up against a wall. And same thing with thyroid. So there's something, actually a term called thyroid pause, which is very appropriate because a woman can be going along and not know that she has any thyroid issues, or if she's had, let's say, been diagnosed with Hashimoto's previously, that whole thing can start changing in perimenopause because as we lose our progesterone, that affects our autoimmune disease if we actually have autoimmune disease, because progesterone has a calming effect on it. So those markers can start going up a little bit. And so let's say we're on medication and it's been working, all of a sudden we're going like, what the heck? And some of the signs that are, that go with hypothyroidism can feel like, perimenopausal signs and vice versa. So the best way to kind of figure out which is not so much testing our sex hormones during perimenopause, because they're all over the place. Usually they can change, by day to day, hour by hour. Actually, they can. But getting a really good thyroid panel is super important. So most doctors will test TSH and free T4 and stop at that. But that doesn't tell us whether or not our body is converting our T4, which is an active thyroid, into the active form, which is T3. It doesn't tell us what our antibodies are doing. So you always need to have both antibodies tested. And I prefer reverse T3 too, because that can kind of give us an insight of, adrenals can block that conversion if we have a lot of cortisol, a lot of stress, can block that conversion of T4 to the active T3. It kind of gets shunted down the reverse T3. So we don't want to have that too high. So that's something that I really look at. And then, you can get a one shot, look at your cortisol. If you really want to look into it, you can do salivary. And so you get 4 different readings through the day. So you can see where your cortisol curve is and levels are as well. So those, I think, are really important. Symptomatically, I think we can pick up some things symptomatically too. So getting a really good history and looking at the person that's in front of you as well. So that's kind of the distinction. I think it's an important distinction to make because, and I mentioned this last night, how, there are some doctors who are readily giving out few, but there are some hormone replacement for women who are in perimenopause. So at least they're open to that. That's great. But sometimes I think we can be missing a very important piece in how to really be supporting a woman, not just by masking it with hormones, if that makes sense.
No, definitely.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
So that would be in a blood work, correct? You would do all the
Yeah.
thyroid group 1. So what okay, good. So what other types of testing would you suggest for women as we're going through perimenopause and menopause?
Well, the other one, possibly, depending on kind of, in conversation, I might suggest that she has a salivary cortisol level so we can kind of see where that is. You can do more involved. You can do a mapping of where hormone levels are. That starts to get a little bit pricey. You can look at, depending on what's going on, into nutrients. You can be looking at a lot of other different things. I was going to say something and it totally escaped me. Yeah, and I'm on lots of estrogen, so I don't know what my problem is.
What maybe the Dutch testing, maybe that's what you're gonna mention?
Thank you. That did come up. Yes, the Dutch testing is very good. If women don't know what that is, that is a dried urine comprehensive hormone test. So what that is it's looking at your hormone metabolites. And why is that important? It's important to understand what our body is doing with our hormones, including estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. It does look at your melatonin levels as well. It looks at cortisol. So it is urine. So it can take readings. You take the urine like 4, sometimes 5 times a day, depending if you wait pee at night. So they're collecting a whole day's worth. And so they'll look at your cortisol diurnal rhythm as well and the levels. It also looks at something called the oats, it's organic acid test. So, a direct measure of, let's say, B12 or folate or B6 doesn't really tell us what our body's doing with these nutrients. So it's really important to look at the metabolites of that or even do a different type of serum testing. Why this is important is, a lot of women are concerned about cancer with taking HRT, which unfortunately has been a narrative that's hung around for over 20 years and it's still there, unfortunately. And when we look at the metabolites, we can kind of see whether or not a woman is going down a more proliferative, a more inflammatory pathway with her estrogens or not. And so we can make a correction there, believe it or not. All right. We can look at a woman's methylation. Methylation's super important when it comes to metabolizing our estrogens and our toxins as well. So we can kind of get an idea of whether or not a woman is a good methylator. And again, when I think of toxins, I think of brain health, I think of Alzheimer's, I think of dementia, I think of all of that. So I think it's broader than just looking at hormones. It gives us a different insight into what's happening. And the exciting thing is lots of times we can change diet, we can supplement and change that pathway of what our body's doing with hormones. And it's a nice thing to do either perimenopause or prior to perimenopause because we have enough hormones to be able to see that breakdown. If you're menopausal and you're not on HRT, the amount of hormones you're going to be making is minuscule. It's going to be harder to get a really good read. If you are on HRT, then again, we can get a better look at it. And I do personally feel that that's something that every woman should do at least once, just to get an idea of how her body methylates, what she does with her hormones, her testosterone, and all of that. So Dutch Hess is really nice. It's kinda digging
Yeah,
in deep.
sounds like a good baseline, something to do at
It's
a good baseline.
mhm, 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 and they
Now,
use
are there other
mhm,
labs? Oh, I'm
mhm.
sorry.
No, no, no,
Are
no,
there
no.
other labs that you see are important in perimenopause?
It depends on what's happening with the woman. If I've looked at thyroid, it looks okay, or we're handling it okay. She's got the support. We've looked at cortisol. We've looked at lifestyle. We've looked at all the basic things, and we're still not getting where we want to be. At that point, maybe starting her on hormones might be a good thing, but maybe doing a more complete organic acid test might be something that's beneficial. If she's got gut issues or if her, let's say, an inflammatory marker, her HSCRP, which is a serum marker for inflammation, doesn't tell us where it's coming from. If that's elevated, then again, I always think of insulin, blood sugar regulation. I think of the gut and I think of oral health because those are probably the three biggest drivers of inflammation in the body, if we've corrected everything else. So I may want a comprehensive stool test, especially if there's, issues going on as well. So perimenopause is kind of a roller coaster for a lot of women. For some women, it's not. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how it was for you guys.
It's horrible.
It was horrible. Okay.
It's horrible.
And we didn't know. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Is like we just kept treating whatever these symptoms were individually. And you just kind of
And
get tired of being like, I feel like something's wrong with me all the
Mhm.
time. I'm just going to ignore everything because you just start to feel like, you're a hypochondriac.
I've gotten to know Christine F a little bit more than Christine O, just because, I had a little more interaction, and it's like both
Mhm.
of you damn are hardcore. You are. Right.
Yes.
It comes to is that I am not stopping for anything. I'm just gonna ignore it all and I'm gonna push through it. It's like, okay, go
Right.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Beat it into submission.
Yes, being in submission. I own this somehow. I'm going to own it. And obviously you're not alone. I mean, they even have, I think they've passed a law. I forget where it just came blipping across my radar where they are allowing for personal and sick days for women who are in perimenopause because it can be so debilitating. I'm glad that women are being supported by having that, but I wish that more companies would have education for their women so they could get help and not just suffer and need to take a day off. I mean, that's really what I would
Yeah.
like to see.
Right. Agreed.
My perimenopause, I went into menopause when I was 43, so I was a little bit young.
Oh, yeah.
But what did it, I think I went from perimenopause to menopause in 2 months. And I probably
Wow.
was experiencing some of these things, but I was going through a divorce. I was moving. My whole world was upside down. I was a mess. And so I thought it was all the things that were happening around me. And that could be true. But I don't remember a whole lot other than anxiety. But again, I thought it was a whole lot of stuff going on. I lost a ton of weight. So between the anxiety and losing too much weight, my body says, we're done making hormones.
It's
Mhm.
stress. It's done a lot
Yeah.
Yeah.
to you.
And you have to have enough weight on in order to make sex hormones. You just do. And
Mhm.
Yeah.
if you don't have it, your body's going to say, excuse me, now I need to hold on to my cholesterol. I need to hold on to everything else for everything else I'm trying to do here. So I don't remember a whole lot of up and down. I was very fortunate that way. So it just was kind of like, okay, here it is. And then it's gone. And everyone's
Well,
different.
it's interesting how every person experiences it differently.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You just mentioned cholesterol, which made me want to ask you, can you tell us how estrogen affects our blood pressure and our cholesterol?
Yeah. Would love to because it's such a big one. And I think doctors falsely want to inappropriately want to handle it and not to, really, it doesn't really help us. Okay. So when estrogen drops in our body and our ovaries pretty much stop producing it, our bodies still want estrogen. And so we will tend to put on that little menna belly. We can, in some women, our breasts can start to grow. And sometimes that might not happen for 5 to 10 years after you go into menopause. Again, everyone is different, obviously. Yeah. So what's happening is our body is laying down a layer of fat because our fat can produce hormones. And it's done by an aromatase enzyme. And the type of estrogen that our fat cells make is the more inflammatory type of estrogen, which is not necessarily what we want. But going back to the cholesterol piece is, again, our body wants to make estrogen, wants to make our hormones. Cholesterol is the backbone of our sex hormones. It's the backbone. So our
Interesting.
body will increase that a little bit. And again, in an effort to make more hormones. It's not unusual at all to start seeing it go up in perimenopause and in menopause. And doctors panic because we're so cholesterol phobic and we're just so narrowed in on this one marker. And cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer in the US. So obviously something we're doing is not working. Getting Yeah, it's not working. And we're not going to feel good. Cholesterol is also, we need enough cholesterol for brain power as well. So it's really unfortunate when a doctor is, clapping, raising his hands when they have someone's cholesterol, especially man's, well, women's too, cholesterol below like 130. It's like, really? This is not helping them at all. So the other part of it, though, is that our LDL, which is our bad cholesterol, can go up in response to more inflammation. So when we lose our estrogen, our estradiol in particular, inflammation in our body can go up. And one of the jobs of the LDL is to take away inflammation and things like that. So that could be another reason. And when you asked about blood pressure, same thing, right? So our progesterone is calming. It'll help with the whole vasoconstriction, and so does estrogen as well. So sometimes just by adding estrogen and progesterone, we can lower that cholesterol. But here again, I don't want us to get too stuck on that cholesterol number. We have to look at the whole picture. And I'm more concerned about a woman's inflammatory or anyone's inflammatory markers than I am about cholesterol.
That's interesting.
Yes.
And we've talked about it on the show, but my sister, who is a total badass, I mean,
Yes.
we've
Yeah.
done races together and same thing, eats clean, works out, strength trains, spins, she's a runner. And her cholesterol, the same thing in her like mid to late 40s into early 50s was like on the rise. So of course the doctor's like, you got to watch what you eat. You have to exercise.
She's
She's
so
like,
skinny.
she goes,
She's
I can't do anymore.
Right. I
Like,
know.
no
we're
idea.
starving.
Yeah, how I
I
could eat cleaner than I
know.
already do,
I
which
know.
is
Come
so
on.
frustrating. And then, but no one ever really made that connection to
Right.
to
Or said, you're so thin, there's gotta be
yes.
something else is going on
Mhm.
here?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the same thing, and she is on HRT, and it has come down. I mean,
Yes. Me too. You know
she's
that.
yeah, and you with you the same
Yeah.
thing. So it's
And mine did too, and it wasn't that it was that high, it was like a 180, 190 or something like that. That's perfectly fine. And, it went down like 20 to 25 points when I raised my, estrogen. So you can see it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, you've experienced it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I absolutely have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very helpful and
Good.
making me stop worrying.
Good. You know what? And I just want to bring this up for any of your listeners who perhaps have had cancer in the past, right? And, they don't feel like they can take HRT. And I totally get that. But it's just like it's one more thing as your cholesterol climbs, right? They're not taking any HRT. It's just one more thing that they have to worry about. And they don't necessarily. Again, I'd rather look at the inflammatory markers because that's what drives the cardiovascular diseases. It's not the cholesterol. So, it's like they got through one thing and then there's another thing for them to worry about. And it just, ugh.
Yep. Can be a lot.
So in addition, I know we've talked about a lot, but how about digestion? What changes would women experience with digestion in perimenopause?
Okay. So digestion's a big one for me because that's my weak spot. We all have a little weak spot and where is it going to show up when things get out of balance? And by the way, that's what got me into functional medicine was my own digestion. I said I didn't really experience a whole lot of perimenopausal stuff. My digestion did shut down when I was going through that period. And that can happen for a variety of reasons. We can have more acid reflux, which I didn't, but we can have more acid reflux because, estrogen, and we can have more something called SIBO for a variety of reasons. But this reason in particular is we know that estrogen is part of collagen, right? Part of our ligaments and all that. We have sphincters throughout our whole digestive system. So sometimes that sphincter between the esophagus and the stomach can relax a little bit. Sometimes the ileocecal sphincter, so the sphincter between the lower and small intestine and the large intestine, can maybe not be as efficient. And so some of that bacteria from your large intestine can leak into the small intestine, which we don't want, which we can get SIBO. There can be a lot of different things that are going on. We have tight junctions in the small intestine that's really important to have. And here again, when we think about elasticity, when we think about ligaments, we think about tissue integrity, it's all over the body. And what can happen is if we don't have enough estrogen on board and stress and everything else, those junctures can just kind of pull apart just a little bit, and we can now have leaky gut. And that is very inflammatory. And for some women, that can also cause a lot of food sensitivities because it can be one of the reasons for food sensitivities. Because when you have that leaky gut, it's like that little particle leaks out and it's not where it's supposed to be. So our body's going to respond. And that is a foreign body, it's a foreign thing. And so that is one way that leaky gut can also show up here and more food sensitivities. Constipation can be a bigger issue as well. Again, progesterone and estrogen can play a role in the motility of the digestive system. So for some women, it can get faster. For some women, we can just kind of freeze up here. Estrogen also plays a role in the amount of stomach acid we produce, which is super important for digestion as well. So we can experience a lot more bloating, and it's just coming from our our guts. It can affect our production of bile, and bile super important because it combines. It's produced in the liver. It combines with our toxins. It also combines with our estrogen. So we have to have our estrogen metabolites removed, right? We don't want to just keep on the old stuff
Right.
circulating, right? So it needs to combine in the liver and then it's moved into the gallbladder, up into the small intestine, and then hopefully we poop it out. Now, there's a chance that that can break apart and we reabsorb our estrogens and we can reabsorb our toxins. Yeah. And so there's a lot of different things that can go on, and depending on the woman, I have a gene snip. I didn't know it, and I just happened to find it. That I have a difficult time making an enzyme, and so taking the raw materials that we need in order to make the bile. I have a gene SNP that has a hard time with that, and estrogen influences it. So when I lost my estrogen, it just got way worse, way, 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 way worse. And it actually wasn't until probably about 8 years after I went into the menopause. Yeah, about 8 years after I was in menopause, that I stumbled across something by Dr. Ben Lynch, who talks about genetics, and he also has his own supplement line, and he was talking about bile and something called bile nutrients, and I was looking at everything there, and I thought, "Heck, I'm gonna try it." It was a missing piece for me. I had been able to get to about 80% of where I need to be digestive-wise, and then there was that 20% I couldn't, it was that missing piece, and it was that bile part, and then I realized I did have that gene SNP from both sides of my family, and here again, okay, do you have to do genetics? No. If I looked at my family history and I looked, my mom had gallbladder issues. She had her gallbladder removed. I have other family members that when they eat a fatty meal, they have to go to the bathroom immediately. I mean, that wasn't me. Depation issues, dry hair. So all these things have to do, bile has to do with our fat vitamins too. So absorbing our fat. So it's really important for a lot of different things. So if you look and take a really good personal history and family history, you can kind of, you know, tease out a lot of these things as well. So
So
It
interesting.
is.
it
Really
It's
is.
fascinating. It is.
the
It
fact that,
is.
like, estrogen just played a part in, like, the entire body,
Mhm.
like
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yes. And
amazing,
estrogen or hormones affect every single cell and tissue and organ in our bodies.
and it's crazy that we lose it. So,
Yeah.
speaking of all the different parts estrogen affects, how about with bone loss? What can you tell us about bone loss and aging?
Yes. Okay. So bone loss. There are so many factors leading up to the time where we hit perimenopause and menopause, which is menopause is when we lose the most amount of bone. So we want to educate people on the importance of when we're building our bone and the things that can interfere with that. Okay. So there's a lot of risk factors that can lead up to bone loss before you hit menopause. And so I mean, we don't have the time here. I don't really want to get into this here because we don't have enough to talk about once we're in
We'll do another
menopause.
one.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
Cindy Dupuie, part
This is
two.
part
Yeah.
2. Okay. So when we hit menopause, a lot of women say, I feel great. I've gone through perimenopause. I've gone through menopause and I am fine. And there are women out there who have gone through it and have skated through it. But the thing is we can't see if our bones are losing bone. Okay, density. We can't see what our blood vessels are doing. So those are the hidden things, the things that I talk below the iceberg that, we can't really see what's happening in our brain. So those are the things that I'm more frightened about than the things that are uncomfortable. All right. Like the night sweats and things like that. And the mood swings, although mood swings can be debilitating too. I'm not shortchanging that. So women will lose the majority amount of bone in their lifetime in the first 6 to 7 years of going into menopause with that big drop in estrogen and progesterone. Okay. So all three of our hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, play a role in bone health. Estrogen is a big one in that, and it's also FDA approved for preventing osteoporosis. I wonder how
Yay.
many of your listeners have ever been offered, if they're showing up with osteopenia or even osteoporosis, how many of your listeners have ever been offered estrogen as part of the therapeutic prescriptive, recommendation?
I know my sister hasn't. My sister's had osteoporosis for years, and she has never mentioned
How old is your
ever being
sister?
offered
No.
estrogen.
How old's
My
your
sister is 65.
Okay. So this is another thing is that the recommendation to do a DEXA scan for the first time, this is insane, is 65. That's usually 15 years after a woman has been in menopause, right?
Yep.
So there's such a big period here for a woman to have had significant amount of bone loss and not being treated. You can build some bone back, but it's much, much harder, right, than preventing that bone loss in the first place. The other thing with estrogen, when you're 65 or 10 years out from menopause, doctors are much more hesitant to put you on hormone replacement therapy. Just again, the old dogma from the oral uh, hormones versus the transdermals. There's all that out there. So it's much harder to get hormone replacement therapy for a woman who is 65 and older if she's never been on it before. So that's a problem. A woman goes in, gets her DEXA scan at 65, and she comes back with osteoporosis. Well, the doctors are not going to say, here you go. They're going to recommend a biphosphonate. And that has its own set of problems. The wonderful thing about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone is there is no danger in taking it for the end of your life. Whereas you can only take a biphosphonate for about 5 years and then they have to take you off. Well, then what do you do?
Right. Then you just have more bone loss.
Then you have more bone loss. And the other thing is the biphosphonates doesn't really necessarily improve the integrity and the strength of the bone. What it does is it stops, shuts down the osteoclast, so the breakdown of the bones. We need to have something synergistic. So we have the bone's a very living thing. We don't think about it as living and changing so much because, you know, we see skeletons, right? It's inert.
It's
So
solid.
yeah, we kind of
We
think
can't see it changing unless you
right,
break it.
right. So we think of our bones as inert and that they're not changing, but they're very changing. And that's one of the reasons why we want to put stress on them is when we put stress on them, they get to be stimulated to be stronger. Okay. They get that stimulation. So if we just give somebody a biphosphonate and it prevents the breakdown of the bone, that's old shitty bone. Okay. It becomes old, shitty bone. This is just sitting there, right? We don't really get a chance to build up that good bone. All right. So after a while, one of the risk factors of biphosphonates is that we can have a fracture in the top of the femur bone. That's not a fairly common, but that is a risk factor. That's still better than breaking your hip and having hip replacement. It is still better than that. But again, it doesn't increase necessarily the integrity of the bone. It may increase the density. So, and by the way, there's new drugs that does build up the bone. But again, we have to have that big intake. And, people go, so what? I have a hip replacement, right? You know, the
I would
surgeon,
never say
No,
that.
no.
yeah.
I would never be like, "Oh, well, yeah, hip
Uh,
yeah."
But it's surgery, okay? And I know
Oh, yeah.
people who have had hip replacements younger, okay? Hip replacements for a variety of reasons. And it's different when we're older. Part of that is often women are frailer, okay? It's that frailty that really gets put into the picture here. And I don't think most people realize this, but, depending on the age that a woman breaks her hip, a man too, has a hip fracture, people don't realize it could be between 20 and I've heard as high as 50. So let's just say between 25 and 30% of people who have a hip replacement over the age of 65 will die within the first year. And it's
Big s
not because of the hip replacement per se. Okay. There's nothing wrong with the hip, nothing wrong with the operation. The problem is it takes time, right, for the recovery. Often they'll go from a hospital into an assisted living or whatever recovery place because they can't go home because they don't have the support there and the care there. So they become more immobile. They become more frail. They become weaker. It becomes this whole vicious circle then. They're laying down more. They could become more exposed to pneumonia bacteria and they're not clearing their lungs out. That can be a problem. UTIs in older people, women in particular, is a big issue. And often they'll have a UTI and won't even realize it. Well, UTI is that bacteria. It goes to all different places in their bodies. So the frailty, and then the slow loss of mobility, just everything that goes along with it. So, yeah, no one wants to replace a hip, but it's not the hip that kills us. Okay. It's everything else that goes along with it. And I don't think people realize that it is such a high number for older people that have hip replacement. Yeah. Within the first year.
Wow. That was a lot on bones. That was really
mhm.
good. Thank you so much.
You're
So,
welcome.
I have to ask you a question for my Aunt Georgie. She lives out in the villages. Hey, Aunt Georgie. So, her and her girlfriends, they do all these trips. So, at least once a month, they're going to the beach on a bus ride. And she said they're all in their 70s and 80s, and they were just all talking about how they have restarted getting hot flashes. So,
Oh,
what can they do for that, and why is that happening?
I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. Wait, are they on HRT or they're not on
I would
HRT?
assume no. I would assume none of these women are on HRT.
Well, then one of the things I would ask, are they on statins and have they upped the statins? That would be one thing.
That's a good
Yeah.
point, yeah.
That would be one thing. Have they lost weight? That would be another thing. Is there more inflammation in the body? So what are the inflammatory markers like? So here again, that's putting that puzzle piece together, right? So cortisol, right? The adrenals can cause hot flashes too. I imagine they're having fun. They're going on bus rides or going on hikes.
Yeah, they're
Right.
having a
There's
blast.
retirees in Florida, and they're partying hard. I know
Yeah.
that from my parents.
They're
Yeah.
partying hard. Okay, how much
Mhm.
alcohol are
Yeah.
they drinking?
I know. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, they do. They definitely
Uh,
definitely indulge, I'm sure.
Okay,
I see
so
them on the beach with their
mhm.
cocktails.
Where's their blood sugar at?
yeah.
Mm,
Where's their insulin levels at?
Okay.
Right? So we go back to that really good blood work, right?
Yeah.
And we look at those inflammatory markers, which is your insulin, your homocysteine, your HSCRP, your ferritin, your sed rate, all of those things need to be ferreted out, right? So we can kind of put it all together.
okay.
I
Alright,
don't
well,
have an
that's good
obvious
information.
reason. Yeah.
So you're gonna have a lot of questions for Aunt Georgie.
She's a
Mhm.
good girl,
Yeah.
trust me.
That's good. Cindy, we've covered a lot.
Yes.
And in
So much.
fact, we may I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions and comments and everything from our listeners. So we may have to have a Cindy Dupuis part two.
We might have
I
to.
But
would
is there
love
anything
that.
else that we missed that maybe you'd want to like kind of cover or to end with?
I think we covered an awful lot.
We
Good.
did. I don't think we missed
Mhm.
anything.
No,
The
it was really
only
good.
the only thing is, and I did say this in the beginning, and I don't know if you probably asked me, I don't know. But I would just like people to know how they can, reach out and get a hold of me and
Yes.
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
Go ahead and you
resources.
can that was the next honest question was
Okay.
going to be where can they reach you?
Okay. So my website is alivingbalance.net, N-E-T. Which is a weird end, I know it. And you can look at what I offer, but also I have a blog. And if you click up there at the top to blog, you have wellness and you have recipes too. And so there's quite a wealth of knowledge there that you can tap into. You can do a search and maybe look for something. I do have the description of the Grace in Transition course for women of a certain age. So it says hormone
Highly
course.
recommend it.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. And I will be offering that again in January, February. So you can just look at that and maybe get on the wait list. I do have a YouTube channel that I'm hoping to populate a little bit more often, and that's under A Living Balance. That's the name of my company.
And your Instagram, which I do follow.
Oh yeah, of course, my Instagram, and that's at Cindy, CINDY underscore my last name, DUPUIE. And there's a lot of information. I, talk about a
You
lot of
have a
different
great
things.
Instagram. I'm
Mhm.
impressed with your
And
Instagram.
I'm
Thank
impressed with
you.
your website as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's so nice to hear that, right?
I know.
It's nice to know people are downloading your stuff.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Yep. Right.
It is
Yeah.
Got to
nice.
hit those downloads, follow the Instagram. We have an Instagram as well,
Yes,
which
you
we
do.
never even announce on here.
I know.
We forget. I'm like, I don't think I ever told anybody we have an Instagram.
I know you
And we have a YouTube.
forget.
We started, yeah.
Yeah.
And we started on YouTube as
Mhm.
well. So the last
Yeah.
few of our episodes have been on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yay.
I know. But
Yes.
Cindy, thank you so much. Again,
My
you were
pleasure.
always so informative
My
and it was
pleasure.
really great. And I know our listeners will really appreciate just hearing about everything and that they're not crazy and that this really is affects everyone in different ways. And you're just so informative. We really appreciate it.
Yes. This
Mhm.
was a full education.
Mhm.
I'm very, very appreciative. We really
Just
appreciate all the knowledge that you shared here
Well,
today.
thank
For
just
you.
learned
sure.
so much.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
Good. It was a
So,
lot of fun. So
yes.
to our listeners, don't forget to download. It will really help us.
Mhm.
You can follow us on Instagram. And again, I just said we're also on YouTube. But until next week, where we will continue to seek answers for women's healthcare.
And support one another. Thank you.
Have a great day,
Mhm.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.